Welcome back, everybody, and thanks so much for making us part of your day and part of your due diligence when you look for smart and fresh plays out there in the market today. And to that end, we are speaking with, for the very first time, PharmAla Biotech Holdings Incorporated. The company's traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange, that's the CSE, under the ticker symbol MDMA. And wow, what a ticker symbol if you know what their business model is. And then here in the States on the OTC under the ticker symbol PMBHF, the company is a biotechnology company focused on the research, development, and manufacturing of novel derivatives of MDMA. I want you to learn more about this company. Do so at their website. It's beautiful. It's pharmala.ca. Let's welcome Nick to the show. Nick, thanks so much for making time for us today.
It's my pleasure. Great to be here.
Well, Nick, before we get into some of the big details about your company and some of the huge milestones and recent news from 2023, for those who may not be familiar with your company, if you would describe the business model and market for us now.
Sure. So look, we're an MDMA company, like the ticker says. And I think a lot of people sort of at first maybe a little bit shocked by that, but there's been about 30 years of research into MDMA as a therapeutic molecule, like as a medicine. And right now we're on the cusp of legalization in a whole bunch of countries, including in the United States, for those who aren't aware. So PharmAla, our business model is pretty simple. Today we make MDMA, therapeutic GMP MDMA for treating patients, usually for fear disorders like PTSD. And then we are researching and developing novel molecules that are derivatives of MDMA for use as medical molecules. So we are a true biotech, but we happen to work in the MDXX class, the class that MDMA belongs to.
Exciting stuff. And there's been a lot of recent news about this and the markets that you operate in here in the States, and I'm sure all throughout North America. I hearken back to a 60 Minutes piece I saw 2 to 3 years ago, and I was blown away on how MDMA was being used to cure all kinds of things. And we're talking about fear of death to alcoholism. And I guess I should caution myself when I use that word cure, but again, exciting things. And when I look at the press wire for your company, just going back in 2023 alone, as the CEO, the sheer volume of news was really impressive. And there were a lot of milestones to me, the uninformed, interested party. To you as the CEO, immersed in it, what do you see as some of the milestones from 2023 for your company?
Look, I think in 2023 was kind of our breakout year. I think we really executed super well. Certainly opening up the Australian market, that was huge for us. So in February of last year, the Australian government announced that they were going to allow patient treatments with MDMA and psilocybin through the authorized prescriber scheme. And our team really hit the ground running. We immediately, 3 weeks later, we were in Australia on the ground, talking with potential partners, talking with manufacturing sites. And we ended up forming a 50-50 joint venture with a company called Vitura Health. They are the largest medical cannabis company in Australia. There is no recreational cannabis in Australia. It's all medical. So that's perfect for us because we are exclusively a medical company. We don't do anything in the recreational side. And so we negotiated a joint venture with Vitura, great partners. So I think that was really, really huge. Getting FDA approval for use of our materials, our MDMA, in clinical trials in the United States. Also, I think a huge stepping stone for us. We do support an awful lot of clinical trials. Over 10 clinical trials utilize our material today. And then just work on our novel molecules, getting a whole bunch of development done, getting a lot of patents filed for the next generations, because we are several generations deep now of novel MDXX compounds. So yeah, hugely exciting year, a lot of movement, a lot of moving pieces, but very gratifying to see some of our plans sort of come together.
You know, you brought up basically there's those two business lines for your company and those novel molecules, as you just touched on. And that brings me back to my due diligence on the company. And it was nice to see all the media that you were willing to do and conduct with so many different parties. Listeners, go back to that pharmala.ca, click on the media tab. Boy, there's just a lot to learn from about this company. Typically, as I get ready for these interviews, Nick, I always want to come in as sort of, as I said, that uninformed party. It's hard to leave uninformed from your website. I'll give you that. Thanks. So kudos to you and your team.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the name of the game. And by the way,
Yeah,
sleep is for suckers. So I like how you were in Australia 3 days after that landmark news came out for Australia. That's
yeah.
fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about what is the significance of being the first to produce GMP MDMA as a publicly traded company. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so look, we're very upfront about the fact that we're a young company. We're only 3 years old. So you remember a little while ago, I said there's been 30 years of research into MDMA. We weren't the ones doing all that research. I think really, really important to give credit to an organization called MAPS, which is a charity that has been funding the majority of MDMA research over the past 3 decades. They have a for-profit wing called Lycos Therapeutics. It's a privately held company. They just raised $100 million in their Series A. So they've done very, very well on the back of that research. We really are drafting in their wake, but we're the only other company right now in the world that has produced clinical grade MDMA. So this is MDMA appropriate for human use that meets all of the criteria that a regulator like the Food and Drug Administration would like to see for patient use, human use. And I think that's really, really important. There's a lot of companies, especially if you look at the small cap space, there's a lot of companies that say like, we will do this or we will do that. And that's fine. But we've actually done it. We've actually done it. We're producing our material. We're now, several batches deep. We've had regulators like FDA scrutinize our manufacturing process and deem it appropriate for human use. And we're actually treating patients already. I mean, in Canada, through the Special Access Program with our partners at Shaman Pharma, we're treating patients. In Australia, through our joint venture Cortexa, we're treating patients. And ultimately, that's what it has to come back to, right? Like, ultimately, this is about treating patients. It's about helping people. And I do think a lot of the time, especially in the stock market, we lose sight of that, right? Like, everybody wants to make money. I get it. That's fine. But the way to make money in this space, if you really keep your wits about you, is getting these materials into the hands of patients and helping people. In the long run, that's the way to make money, and we're doing that.
Absolutely. That's a well-made point by you, and I appreciate that. We deal with all kinds of biopharma stocks here at smallcapvoice.com. And you're right, when we're dealing with investors and shareholders, it's all about the bottom line. But really, as a company, it's all about helping people, and that's key. And I appreciate you pointing that out. So dealing with MDMA, and you foreshadowed this earlier about the change in the winds, and you're starting to move from headwinds to tailwinds, which that's
Yeah.
got to be exciting for you as your company. But as it stands right now, what's it like dealing with some of these barriers? How have you had to navigate the difference between Canada, the United States? We're moving into the questions that we've received from shareholders now. So here's the question. Can you elaborate on how PharmAla is able to research and development product for the Canadian and potentially US markets as it stands today?
Yeah. So we like to say at PharmAla, we run a regulatory first organization. So my background's in regulatory. My COO used to work for the Canadian government. We're all kind of regulatory experts here, and you do have to be. I don't think that that's optional in this space. But research has always been allowed for any scheduled molecule. I mean, you can do a clinical trial into pretty much anything, right? As long as you follow the necessary steps, get approval from FDA for the clinical trial and DEA for the scheduled compound. It's all possible. So we live in that world. We sort of live and breathe it every day. In Canada, the way that we treat patients is through something called the Special Access Program, SAP. In Australia, it's through something called the Authorized Prescriber Scheme. There are legal pathways for all of this. That doesn't mean that they're easy. They are, generally speaking, challenging, and this is part of the moat that we have. We don't necessarily have an IP moat on the generic molecule on MDMA. It's been off patent for a long time. It's like 100 years old. I think older than 100 years at this point. So well off patent. We do have an IP moat on our new stuff, the novel molecules that we develop, but we have a regulatory moat around all controlled substances because I think for a lot of companies, it's just too much hassle, and they don't want to deal with it. And because this is sort of our lifeblood, this is our bread and butter. We've become quite well versed in treading those pathways and dealing with regulators. We talk with our regulators all the time. Sometimes they ask us to change things, and we say yes. We do what they ask.
Yeah, always the best case when you do what they ask when it comes to regulators. And it's impressive to hear about the team you've assembled around yourself and your backgrounds that make you so adept at navigating these channels as well. So let's talk about, and again, I want to thank everybody for sharing questions with us here at smallcapvoice.com. You can do it socially. You can send it directly to us via our website. Here's another question, and it's getting specific to your LaNeo MDMA product, and it's used to treat PTSD, but I know it's got other applications that you're thinking about because I've seen how these work. Over the years, we've seen various success with companies and researchers using other narcotics or psychedelics to treat mental health conditions. What makes MDMA different in this treatment methodology, and how LaNeo help patients afflicted with it? Boy, that's a mouthful for me.
Yeah, it's all good, man. Well, a couple of things. One is MDMA is way further along in sort of the regulatory approval pathway than the rest of the drugs that we've talked about. So you talk about psilocybin. Psilocybin's been through phase 2 clinical trial. MDMA has now been through two phase 3 clinical trials, both published in the public domain, and then on top of that, it has already been submitted by Lykos Therapeutics for a new drug application. That happened just last month. So the FDA will answer in the next little while on what the timeline is to get MDMA fully approved in the United States. It's also been granted breakthrough therapy status because it's so effective at treating post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's been the case for, I think 5 years almost, right? That's one. Two, you have countries like Canada and Australia who have seen that phase 3 clinical data, and owing to the sort of crisis that we have in mental health, have said, we're going to allow some limited use of these drugs in our countries, whether that be through the special access program or the authorized prescriber scheme, but we're going to allow some use. So this isn't a hypothetical question anymore. There are patients being treated with MDMA in Canada and Australia every single day. And that provides us as a company with some really, really amazing opportunities that you wouldn't get usually. So as an example, at the end of last year, we announced that we're working with the University of Calgary and Heroic Hearts Canada to do an observational trial on real world outcomes using MDMA. So we make the drugs, they're distributed by our partners at Shaman Pharma, patients are taking them, and then University of Calgary researchers are talking to those patients and assessing whether the MDMA helped them, right? Now, I'm pretty sure based on what we've heard from our patients that it is, but we're going to gather this data in a sort of methodical fashion. Why is that amazing? Well, if you think about it, that's not a possibility for any other drug, like anywhere in the world. It never happens that you have a drug that's not approved, but it's being used in the real world.
Yep.
With the exception of maybe like, botanical treatments, stuff like that, right? Traditional medicine. So here you have a drug that's actively being used through these pathways, and we gather the data on those. You can actually submit those to regulators. Like you can submit that real world evidence to regulators and say you should assess the legal status of this drug because based on real world evidence, it's helping patients. So really, really remarkable opportunities that are not available in other ways with other drugs.
That's tremendous. Well, let's talk a little bit about the global strategy. Again, you pointed out a little bit about this when talking about Cortexa and your work with Vitura. So let's talk about how this then gives you a foothold then into other countries, maybe an SOP that's developed when you're dealings with Australia that you can translate into South America, Eastern Europe, wherever it might be that takes your company next.
Look, I think we all need to acknowledge that we have a limited ability to impact, what decisions countries make, right? I used to be a corporate lobbyist. That was my job. You're very, very limited in impacting the decisions of like large entities like countries. I think as a company, our obligation to both our shareholders and to patients is that when a country makes a decision, like Australia did, that they want to allow these types of treatments in their country, we have to be ready and able to provide the drug for those patients, right? Like somebody else has made the decision that they want this. Our job is to make sure that there is safe and ready supply to provide. And I think what we proved in Australia is we can action that very, very quickly. And we do have sort of like a game plan, an SOP for new markets. One of my mentors basically said to me at one point, as a company, opening your first international market is one of those inflection points, right? It's just one of those make or break moments for any company, because it's hard. You don't know whether you're gonna, you don't know whether you're going to be in a place where you don't understand the business culture. You don't know whether you're going to be able to find the right partners. You don't know if you're going to be able to navigate those regulatory landscapes. I think we got very, very lucky that it was Australia. As a Canadian company, I think that we could deal with Australians pretty easily. Yep. It was an easy sort of transition for us. I think we got incredibly lucky with our choice of partners. Vitura is a great company. They have obviously a great track record of success. They're a very large business. They're also publicly traded. They know sort of our world. They know their world very, very well. Guy Headley, Rodney, their CEO, fantastic guys, very, very good business people. So I think a lot of things went right. We got lucky, but also we've now developed that sort of muscle memory. So the next time that a market shifts, regulatory landscape shifts, like in South America or anywhere else in the world, we can be there very, very quickly, and we can activate and sort of enter that market. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of success globally, because I do think certainly this calendar year there will be other markets that shift. There's too much evidence of efficacy for healthcare systems to sort of ignore the possibilities here. And I know this gets said a lot to the point where it sounds like a cliche, but the mental health care crisis globally is accelerating. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. So the need for new treatments is just really, really painfully felt in a lot of places right now.
Hear, hear. Totally agree with you. And you say lucky about your opportunity with Australia. Personal note, my old football coach only said there is no luck. There's when preparation meets opportunity. And that's what luck is. And that's what it seems like your relationship with Vitura really is. So your company came onto our wire and our watch list because of the activity around your company on Twitter, as well as your recent financial release for the company. So we're right here at the beginning of 2024, and we're grateful to have you on our show here. Let's talk a little bit operationally, what you'd like to see your company achieve here in maybe Q1, Q2, maybe the entirety of 2024.
Yeah, thanks. Well, look, like I said, there's two sides to our business, and we spend a lot of time talking about the generic business. I get it. That's the business that generates the revenue that sort of pays us today. So we should be talking about it. And on that side, look, I want to accelerate the number of patient treatments that we do in Canada. I want to accelerate the number of patient treatments that we do in Australia. We have two great markets, and we really need to put the pedal to the metal. Maybe start getting reimbursement from government bodies. That's a big priority there. And certainly, I think that's possible for this year. But really, a lot of focus this year is going to be on the novel molecule side. So, I'm speaking to you today from San Francisco. I'm at the JP Morgan conference here, where we're speaking with large pharmaceutical companies. And we have some really great IP assets. I think the retail investor doesn't look at those IP assets a lot because these are like complex technical topics. I get it. Easier to talk about, just like MDMA, and more fun. And I'm there for it. Don't get me wrong. But I think we have a lot of opportunity to sort of out-license and partner with large pharma companies on some of the IP assets that we've developed, because we really do have some great stuff. And so that's a big focus for us as well for 2024.
Outstanding. Well, again, viewers, listeners, we are speaking with Nick Kadysh. He is the CEO of PharmAla Biotech Holdings Incorporated, traded on the CSE under the ticker symbol, what? MDMA. And here in the States on the OTC under the ticker symbol PMBHF. Nick, sounds like you're a very busy man. You're at the JP Morgan there in San Francisco. We won't keep you any longer. We look forward to checking back in with you later in 2024 to see if some of the things that we talked about today came to fruition. Best of luck to you, your entire team at PharmAla, and Godspeed on the work you're doing. You're right, the mental health crisis is not slowing down. We see no proof of that. All we see is an acceleration in the world that we live in. So we appreciate the work that you're doing there at PharmAla as well. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks so much, Stuart. Thank you.
All right, for Nick Kadysh, this is Stuart Smith saying Thanks so much for watching.